Very well, welcome to Capital Sports 3.0 from a new location for me. Well, a kind of location within a different country, but there you go. So we're going to have a very nice, swift, nifty, and very hard-hitting show tonight with my co-host in just one moment. I'm going to bring him in. We have an awful lot to go through. We have, of course, the whole situation over the trans ban in cycling. We have Declan Rice becoming the richest, he will be very rich, but the most expensive ever footballer in British football history. We're going to discuss if he is worth all that money, of course. We will then move on and have a look at some of the other people who are knocking around sports and kind of causing a little bit of trouble for themselves, including, Novak Djokovic, of course, he just lost. So that he was going for a massive title. He was going for 5 in a row. He had been unbeaten for so long, going for a record-equaling 8th Wimbledon men's singles title, and of course fell short today against the young 20-year-old from Spain, Mr. Alcaraz. We also have the Irish, the Irish women's football team walked off playing a friendly on Friday night in Australia. We'll have a little look at what caused all of that in just one moment. And also Lionel Messi, he is meeting exuberance and already getting slammed for it as well. So we're going to go straight away out to Siberia. I think he's 4 time zones away from me, Mr. Andrew Flint. Andrew, first of all, internet beat us both today, but internet was beating you in terms of getting the Wimbledon final. How did you find it that you're watching? Of course, it bugged out at 5-1. So how was it for you?
Well, I have to say I was absolutely gripped, and I've been gripped by the entire championship so far. But I mean, what was fascinating for me was the dynamic between Djokovic, who I'm sure some people will say and arguably is the greatest player of all time, and yet he seemed unloved by the Wimbledon crowd. He was always having a back and forth with them through the final. Alcaraz comes back with second and third sets, how often do you see in a final one player wins the first set 6-1 and then loses the third set 6-1? It was swinging back and forth, and the two of them they're just animals. They're monsters, machines. I know all professional players hit the ball very hard, to say the least, but Alcaraz in the fourth set played one of the best drop shots I've ever seen in my life, and this is from a power hitter. This is from a youngster who's got his future ahead of him, but my God, what a final! What a final! I have a few choice words for internet providers. We were just about to kick off, and in my stream, the fifth set was just starting. I thought this is going to be interesting. Live radio will say, "All right, we're on to there's a break in the third game or whatever," and find out Djokovic has lost. But what a run! I mean, Djokovic is unbeaten, had been unbeaten on centre court in, I think it was 32, 33 matches?
Yeah.
I think I'm right in saying Andy Murray was the last person to actually beat him on centre court. And that was 10 years ago when Murray won the title in 2013. It's just insane, the numbers that this man puts up. It's not just the numbers, it's the character to battle back. I mean, the man is 36 years old. He is a phenomenal athlete. But he is 36 years old, and he's got this youngster, this 20-year-old who is just even more explosive in some ways. And the youngster is on top, and Djokovic still fights back to get that fourth set. It's just, if you cannot be entertained by that, then there just is no hope for you, as far as I'm concerned. So
no, I agree.
What a moment.
We have our questions about Djokovic, we all know that. But, hats off. No matter what you take, you still have to go out and do it on the day, and he's been doing it on the day. Now, of course, this past week, huge announcement I can't say it broke a lot of West Ham hearts. It just was coming. It was a long, slow car crash, and this is kind of how it was announced by friends of ours at the Transfer Exchange show, and then what happened within the club itself.
This is a massive club. You can't be comfortable here. You have to push yourself to the max.
I can't do without their policy, I go. I must fall in with all my brothers above. If they wanna bounce, person, he cannot be mine. Men just Baku, it be like them be right. Walk them. I leave Abuja, come and cry, left my mother. Do the heavy race so them go erect that placard. As now me dog in pillar. Now me robbing millions, I'm cross the billions. I can't do without their policy, I go. I must fall in with all my brothers above. If they wanna bounce, person, it cannot be my own. Men just buckle, if you like them, be right.
Good morning, everyone. Before we start the review, what happened in Germany, I would like to obviously welcome our additions to the club, our family. Declan, welcome to the family. Is there anything you would like to say?
Yeah, I'll say a few words. Obviously, first day, I'm really looking forward to playing with you all, to sharing many good moments together. Obviously, see what you guys have been doing the last couple of seasons, so I'm really looking forward to getting started and hopefully enjoying a few trophies together.
Vamos!
Vamos indeed, and of course he is going to the Ons Jabeur of football clubs, the Ivan Lendl of London. They're going to choke again. Andrew, I don't think one, they say one swallow does not a summer make, and one decent guy who betrayed Ireland is not going to make a championship winning team, is it?
I think Declan Rice's unfortunate problem that has been thrust upon him is, I would say, the last 2 years, even 3 years, you could argue, has been this really, really tedious debate going on about, is he really worth 100 million? We've had the figure 100 or 150 million quoted by West Ham's asking price for the man. Well, the reason I bring that up first is, yes, of course, the transfer is always something that focuses everybody's attention when it's 3 figures like this. But the pressure on him to deliver a return on such a huge outlay is fairly significant. But I would argue he is a very good signing. Is it value for money? Well, it's not a simple transaction. This is what people always forget about transfer fees. They think, well, if you pay 50 million for this player, then 20 million more for a 70 million player, is it worth it? It's not like that. It's what the club needs themselves. It's what the value of that player is to the selling club. To West Ham, I would argue almost they've possibly undersold him for 105 because of the value he is worth to them. Arsenal's midfield has been slightly weakened. Granit Xhaka has left to the Bundesliga for good money, I would argue, for about 20 million. I think he went to, is it Leverkusen he signed for? And he was a very, very important part of their midfield. Now, it wasn't always consistent with his leadership. Will Declan Rice instantly replace Xhaka? No, he won't. Not in the same mentality role, but in terms of what he can do on the pitch, he'll be a vital player for Arsenal, but he's not going to win them championships. What Arsenal need is simply experience of being at the top table, which they haven't had for a long time. Of course they've got talent. Of course they've got the potential. We saw how close they pushed Manchester City towards the end. Even though I never believed they would get over the line, they did get much closer than we all thought. So in theory, they're not far off. But they lost their striker, Gabriel Jesus, halfway through the season to injury, and you can see how much that cost them. So it's not as acute a problem as Manchester United had last season. You miss 1 or 2 key players, Manchester United fell flat. Arsenal are still lacking in championship depth. Declan Rice will help. He's a big name signing. It will boost his confidence to be at a top club playing top level football, but Arsenal still need more, which sounds harsh, but it's true. They do if they want to be absolute title challengers.
If we look at the transfer fees, of course, now this 100 million sterling mark is quite off because it actually is, I think it's 115 in the end because there are add-ons and so come into it. Jack Grealish, of course, has done well for Man City coming in at 100 million. I mean, that, again, when Irish people look at this, they'd go, "Oh my God, 2 Irish internationals, the most expensive." That was never going to be because the boys were both okay. Let's put it this way: they both played for Ireland the whole way up, but they're both English born. They both know if they were Irish, if Declan Rice was Irish, he'd probably cost around 40 million max. That's what he would cost. So we'll be very honest about that. And I wrote an article this many years ago when this whole debate was going on about Jack Grealish, actually, that it was, one of my kids, if it was, at the time, Tim, like it was Tim, and he had the chance to play. I honestly, Andrew, I would not begrudge him if he said he'd stick to play for Russia or whoever it was, because he'd get better salary, better opportunities. You'd have to do that. Like you look at Jude Bellingham moving across the summer as well. Arguably, as I would believe him to be more a valuable player than Jack Grealish, but that's just my thought. Gareth Bale, of course, has gone way back from where he was. Of course, he's gone, but at the time it was a massive signing and a massive amount of money that moved into Daniel Levy's pockets. Harry Maguire, he's now been looking to get 40-50 million for him, and again another Irish origin player, but at the same time, again, I think as we discussed it before, he has come back, but I think he's still a solid player, and he would do a good job for any team. At that point, Andrew, in terms of transfer fees, just a simple thing: is Declan Rice worth it? Is Jack Grealish worth it? Is Jude Bellingham worth it?
I mean, short answer, I would say yes. It sounds ridiculous, but the numbers are almost irrelevant. The explosion in the inflated value of what 100 million actually means bears no relation to 20 years ago, even 15 years ago. So there's no point trying to compare it. The reason I say worth it is simply because that is the market value for Declan Rice. I actually think Arsenal, I'm surprised they didn't end up paying a bit more. So in that sense, yes, I'd say he is. Jude Bellingham to Real Madrid for less money, I'd actually argue is slightly more surprising, simply because I think Jude Bellingham is a more complete player. He's shown that in a foreign league. Don't forget, Declan Rice is, relatively speaking, in his comfort zone. He grew up a large part of his career, his youth, in London. So it's not as if he's had to adjust to that. Jude Bellingham has done that. He's now gone to his second European giant already. So I'd argue, instead of saying I don't like how big the transfer fees are, you have to take it in context of where we are, what money is spent in football. Even discounting the sums we're seeing in Saudi football at the moment, which are just they're not relevant to the entire football world. The Saudi project right now is something completely separate, in my view. I don't mean it in a negative sense, just simply the resources. They just simply do not exist elsewhere. So don't try and compare them.
Yeah.
The value of a player now to 10 years ago, resources all round, TV deals have changed, have expanded. So why say, is he worth it? I'd say yes.
Cian, how are you doing? He said, am I right in saying you're wrong, because it would have been Niall Quinn. Niall Quinn played for Arsenal, but I don't know if he's an international at that moment, but he did play for Arsenal at the time. And I think he was an international at the time as well. So that's it. Just in case anyone is wondering how to find out our regular news, and of course we've got a very nice news channel on Telegram. That's at @capital_sports. So you can follow us there and get all the latest news, views, reviews, previews, and interviews as well, and some very interesting content. Before we move on, I have one other small item to discuss, but I'll first mention this next one, and this, of course, is manager salaries. Huge, highest paid. This might be quite small. Diego Simeone is still number one in the world. He is still top of the pops. Pep Guardiola in second. Jurgen Klopp in third, unsurprisingly, and then Steven Gerrard at El Ettifaq. I mean, Andrew, let's be honest with it. If we could get that money, we'd do it as well.
Anybody who says otherwise is basically lying. Absolutely. I mean, look, it's not Steven Gerrard's fault he's been offered that money. This is what so many people forget, and it kind of annoys me about football fandom in the modern era that people judge it compared to other completely incomparable spheres. I mean, just because you may believe and may well be right that a neurosurgeon deserves to be paid more than an entertainer, it doesn't change the fact that the entertainers are offered that money. They're not the one putting a gun to their head and saying, look, don't just pay me 200 grand a year, give me 200 grand a week. And if they say, okay, we're offering you it, you'd be an idiot, you'd be a fool, and you should be criticised for not accepting those offers.
That's true. No, Andrew,
yes,
look.
Is Steven Gerrard the fourth? Is Steven Gerrard the fourth best manager in the world? Not a single person, even Steven Gerrard, would believe that. But that's not his problem.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I mean, look, you are basically, if you put a value on yourself and you get that one value, you do it. Don't even think twice about it. Of course, a couple of responses. We will mention this. Well, she'll speak about Mason Mental a bit later. I want to speak with Dele Alli, but I'm going to leave it until we're all on next week together because it's still kind of bubbling through the whole situation with him. But what I do want to have a look at, of course, is the Women's World Cup, which starts this Thursday morning.
Mm-hmm.
This happened on Friday night. I think it was in Brisbane. Ireland playing a behind closed doors friendly with Colombia. Supposedly, it was overly physical, and the whole thing came out from the Irish camp and so on. They were complaining about it. This is the challenge which put a player in hospital and basically caused all the furor. So you can judge it yourselves. No, I'll play it again, Andrew, okay? Because just to watch it, it's the player in the middle of the field. The player comes kind of through the side of her and just clips the ball and apparently left Denise O'Sullivan in hospital. So just watch it again. For me, I just still don't get this. "20 minutes gone, Ireland walk off." Andrew, I'm sorry, but like even in most friendlies, there was no racial abuse, which you've highlighted before. There was no homophobic abuse. There was no fan abuse. It's behind closed doors. This is just a normal, tough, friendly match, a build-up for a World Cup. And I do believe Ireland have done themselves a great disservice. They said Denise O'Sullivan's injured, she had to go to hospital. Yeah, well, she's at a hospital. She's going to play on Thursday. I think Ireland did themselves a great disservice because home right now in Ireland, it's green everywhere. Walking, my mom is talking about it. Everyone's talking about this. This is a big, big deal. And they act like prima donnas. And I'm sorry, if a men's team did that, I would say the exact same thing. You can't walk off the field. If a big punch-up breaks out, okay, it's up to the referee. But, you have a word to the referee. You don't say, we're too good for this and we don't want to be injured. I'm sorry, but that's just not how it works.
No, I'll be honest, that is actually the first time I've seen that clip. I saw the news break and I thought, that immediately rang a bell with the men's under-21 side in Austria against Kuwait for different reasons, admittedly. But I thought, well, okay, this has got to be something fairly hefty. I mean, I don't remember hearing about any match, friendly, competitive or not, being called off purely for that reason of physicality. So I thought, well, this must have been fairly juicy. I mean, it must have been something more than just a challenge. I mean, it is a contact sport. I mean, you're going into a World Cup, it's got to be the pinnacle, the absolute height of your entire international career. So commitment, desperation in some individual moments in matches is going to be there. That's the entire point. You have to be prepared for that. I mean, if you genuinely believe that putting yourself in that situation in a match, that you're not prepared to go through the physical challenges, well, just don't be a professional sports person. Nobody's forcing you to take up this profession. That's a challenge. I mean, just again, I wasn't there right up in person, and I know it can always give you a slightly different impression, a replay compared to being there in person. I know, but the impact was, like you say, from the side. It looked like the impact was on the thigh or the hip. I mean, that's a precaution. Take the player off. Of course, you understand that. That makes sense. But I mean, it wasn't even as if the other Irish players were completely outraged. They looked like they were looking for a free kick at most. But
yeah,
it wasn't like there was a rush of danger for like you mentioned, a punch-up breaking out, if that was the possibility, okay, that would make sense. But this was, I mean, it looked like a dead leg, or that's what it looked like from there. She went to hospital, she had the checkup, and whatever.
Yeah, look,
I don't.
Keane's like a late challenge, but as far as I can see, why does that mean that they walk after 20 minutes? Keane, look, and it's not like we're like, I mean, we're not like we're thinking that they were weak or something. It just, for me, I did believe it was a bit of caprice. I didn't like it. I thought it sets a very bad signal, and I think that as a result of this, Ireland are going to have a terrible World Cup finals. I think it's going to be very, very bad for them. Nigeria are in all sorts of problems, and we'll show this in just one moment. We'll just share this screen with you so you can see what we're speaking about. Because it kicks off on Thursday. We will be covering, we'll be talking about it next week. We'll be covering it on our Telegram channel as well. So you'll be able to follow the latest on it as we go along. And for me, I don't know why we're playing. So we see that the first game scores are Norway and New Zealand. So that'll be the opening game along with Australia and Ireland. So Ireland, if they can get out of that, like losing 1 or 2-0, I think is a very good start for them. You've got Nigeria and Canada like in the same group as well. Canada, terrific side. Nigeria are a good side, but they have all sorts of financial problems, all sorts of battles, problems at home, and it's going to make them suffer as well. Philippines and Switzerland, of course, Philippines first World Cup, they're up against a decent Swiss side. Spain, Costa Rica, a big one there, of course. USA and Vietnam. USA are huge. They're going for it again. They're going for, I think, 3 in a row. The one, England and Haiti, Andrew. I mean, the Lionesses, as we call them. I mean, they're going. European champions are going well. There's a lot of good teams knocking around the place, including Zambia, who Ireland played in a pre-World Cup friendly. China as well. Germany very, very strong as well. France very strong. Spain, of course, good. But at the same time, Brazil, of course, are well in there as well. Were you looking for the Lionesses to do quite well, Andrew?
Well, absolutely. They are in about the best moment they've been in, well, I would say ever, arguably. I mean, the European Championship win really did catch the imagination. Records were broken for attendance, and they do have players at the very top of their game. We saw Alessia Russo was one of the, I wouldn't say breakout stars, but she really announced herself at the European Championships win. In January, a world record bid for a women's player was put in for her from Arsenal, and Manchester United were pushing for the title at the time. We didn't want to let her go, and just it was. I believe the bid was about £500,000, and this is for a player whose contract ran out and has now run out, and she's joined Arsenal on a free transfer in the summer. To put in a world record bid for a player whose contract runs out in a few months' time shows quite how much the attention is there. They have a huge amount of depth, strength from depth. I mean, I think my favourite thing was the fact that the top goal scorer in the Women's Super League last season was Rachel Daly. She was played at left back. She could only get in the Lionesses side at left back. This is a striker who is banging in goals for fun. But the pressure is now, the other side of that is the pressure's on the Lionesses. Expectation is there. It's not just, well, you're not quite at the level of Japan, Sweden, France, USA, of course. They're now expected to do well. And I think England's group is a comfortable one as they go. Haiti are debutants. They're not expected to do so well, although a lot of their side were in the Haiti under-20 side who got to the last Women's Under-20 World Cup. So there are some young players there with basically nothing to lose, but what they've had to go through with the sex abuse scandals in the Haiti FA, the political turmoil, gang warfare on the streets of Port-au-Prince, social turmoil. I mean, the country's gone through natural disasters in the last few years. I mean, virtually everything that could go against them has, and they still qualified. That shows pretty good strength. So England should not be looking at Haiti as, oh, that's a walkover. China are not the power they once were, or they are Asian champions. So there's that to look at as well. It's going to be an interesting tournament because the For England, expectation is high, but so many countries are going through huge amounts of change at the moment. A lot of debutants in the tournament too. So expectation is something England need to embrace. They've got to get used to it because they are now at the top table of women's football, but pressure's on.
Okay, we'll go to a very, very quick break and then come straight back with the trans ban.
You're the first trans woman to pave the way here in road racing here at Tour de Gila. Yeah, this is your second year, but the first one to be racing on this level. When are we going to be able to talk about all of this in an open forum? I mean, from both, it seems like, you know, just like on both sides, it seems like voices are being silenced. But, you know, whatever the answer is, you're paving the way, you're making strides. How important do you think it is for all of us on either side to be able to speak about this openly without both sides being in fear of being retaliated against?
Yeah, I mean, I think a world of open and productive dialogue that comes from a place that's like graceful and sincere is really positive. I mean, I think, you know, I think, you know, keeping, you know, I think good faith discourse, you know, that's sort of grounded and you know, love and caring for others is a positive thing. And I think when the discourse takes place in that context, I you know, certainly appreciate that. You know, and enjoy being in conversation with people, and also I'm very grateful to, you know, be in a peloton that's like, you know, I think how
has it been? I mean, for you, how have you had any issues or, you know, things personally you're okay as far as racing in the peloton?
I've got a lot of friends here, and you know, I'm here because, you know, sport is you know, community is a central part of sport, and, you know, I'm here to, you know, have fun with my friends, to smile and enjoy being with them. So
well, hopefully we can have okay, thank you.
Now, of course, the interviewer was trying her best to get something started, and the funny thing was, for me, the whole thing, and while I understand, yes, questions to be asked, Austin Kilps, of course, is a trans woman who has not fully transitioned, has identified as a woman, lives as a woman, but has not transitioned, as in made the operations and so on, but has come down testosterone and so on. Of course, that's one of the reasons why now the UCI have banned trans cyclists. The British Cycling Association have already done that. The funny thing that I found with this was the interviewer was wearing a mask, and it was outdoors, and there were no COVID, you know, which, you know, again, you can hear it on the screen, but when you see the photos of it, that's what it was. So she was trying to, you know, get something going. We discussed that before with Inga Thompson and with Kristen as well. So we had gone through all this before. We've gone through it, but this now new situation with the ban, full ban. So they've tightened the rules. So said like that transgender athletes cannot race in the women's section. And of course, last week we had that great thinker Megan Rapinoe coming out and saying that she's happy for trans women to play in women's football because she's retiring this year. FIFA have yet to make a decision on it. They haven't actually said anything about it. So there could be trans footballers at this World Cup. They are saying that they're, you know, very much for inclusivity and equality, but they're also afraid. With Megan Rapinoe, since she would support a trans woman playing in the American team, even there have been some rumblings of discontent from her teammates. Andrew, will we ever see an end to this? Is this going to, you know, affect, say, how my daughter, your daughter is going to be, you know, thinking about sport? Or is this kind of like, and I was discussing it today with my brother, kind of like a bit like BLM, that is a fad and it'll just go away when the next big thing comes along?
I would love to say I believe that progress will be made, but deep down I know it won't. The next big thing, I mean, it seems churlish to reduce it to that, but that is kind of true. I mean, look, let's be perfectly honest. There are issues that cannot be ignored because they are spread over every single headline in every format, and sport has no choice but to address whatever is the most talked about topic or topics of the day. When it comes to trans, I think this is trans athletes competing. I think the first step that needs to be taken is the language used. By language, I don't mean offensive language. I mean simply, what do you mean by trans? Be more specific. When we had that conversation with Kristen, it was so eye-opening because I had never looked at it this way. But what she was saying seemed to pick holes in the way that people lump everybody they don't quite understand into one bracket called trans, and right, that's it. I just don't want anything to do with them. What we saw in the interview there was a very uncomfortable athlete, to be honest. I mean, just looking down, shoulders hunched up, almost apologetic. And I think the key thing was discourse, conversation. It's not going to be a quick process, even if the best outcome would be that a conversation happens, that people start to understand. Look, it's not about being woke or modern, but just simply understanding more. I mean, I understand very little still, and yet I know that there's a need for a conversation. So what sports will do now, they will be dictated by stakeholders, the players, the sponsors. There's no point trying to pretend otherwise. Money does dictate a huge amount of this. What I think would just be so much more sensible would be to say, look, if FIFA came out, UEFA came out, whichever governing body of any sport came out and said, look, we understand that we don't understand everything, but we're going to have conversations about how to define, how to include and keep competitive fairness. We're not going to promise that we have the answer right now. A ban one way or the other without explaining it, without going into detail, saying, look, this is the science behind, this is what exists. These are the people who are at different stages of transition, that you have to understand there's a difference between them all. This is what we're going to try and do. We're going to make it inclusive, if it's a new category or not, if it is different benchmarks. I don't like the idea of a benchmark, but there has to be some form of a rule established if you're going to allow or ban athletes from certain categories. Instead of just saying someone who is no longer identifying as one gender that they were born with, that is one lump. Instead of saying that and saying, look, okay, it's more than just that. We have to understand this. There is a safety aspect. There is a competitive sporting integrity element of it. There has to be that conversation first. Do I believe it's going to happen? Media won't probably let it happen.
No. And there's this kind of, there's a weird fear, Andrew, that if you discuss it, you're either for or against. If you discuss it and say, right, tell me not what you feel, tell me what you've experienced, tell me your facts, tell me what you know. Andrew, you've been here with me. I mean, Cian's been on with me. Easel did a one-on-one. So we discussed it with the people involved, the people on all sides. There's not just two sides in it. Like you said, it's not just, trans. No, it's a very diverse group. It's not just like this LGBT. It's a huge, diverse group. But people want, this wall is white. That's it. I don't want to see that there's a different shade of white. I don't want to see beige, because beige makes me scared. I don't understand what beige is. Is it brown? Is it white? Is it black? What the hell is beige? Yeah. And if you step out that line, which we experienced ourselves when we were actually rubbishing these horrible rumors about a young athlete who died, saying, look, this has nothing to do with COVID. This has nothing to do with vaccines. Stop this nonsense. We were banned for whatever, discrediting the WHO.
But not towing a line that someone else wanted.
And basically not just like saying...
We weren't towing...
Yeah. And this is the whole thing that I do not get. And we have known this. We've done this before on the radio. We've discussed it. We've been open. We've spoken about the Black Lives Matter. We spoke with people of colour who... I remember with Derek from Zambia, Boz, when we asked him, what does he think? I was like, okay, Derek's going to give it very, very straight. And he's like, it's a nonsense. It doesn't do anything. It's just all for show. And that's what he said. So, and again, this is just I worry about it, and I worry about the impact on kids, and I worry about the impact on people who have transitioned and people who want to transition. And it's a huge media circus. And you've got, like, if we were to turn around, as you and I discussed before, if we just went straight down one line, like, trans people are all sick in the head, should be all burnt alive. Or if you dare question it, you're a TERF, you're committing genocide. If we did this way or this way, we would have a big audience, but it would be just a little bubble, and no one would want to speak with us. That's it, pure and simple. So,
scared of beige, I think, is a good way to sum it up. People are scared of beige. They're scared of shade. They just want a simple, clear cut because it's easier and more comfortable.
Yeah, you don't have to think. You just get fed it, and that's it. Okay, exactly. We'll go for a quick break and be back with a slightly different discussion in just one moment about privacy of football players and athletes in general. That was, of course, Lionel Messi. He was in a shopping center or supermarket in Miami with his wife and kids. He took the photo. He said to the wife, "Gives the car keys, I'm going to the car." No one knows that he went out and sat in the car just not to sign autographs. He's well within his rights. And also, I think he doesn't understand that in America, this is what Americans do. If you're in Britain or Ireland or in Europe, people do have that little bit of a hands-off feel. They kind of go, it's your life. Yeah. I've done it before where I've up and asked people, look, I'm sorry to ask you, could I get an autograph or with you, or a photo taken with our group, but after you've met, if it's okay. People always say, yes, of course. But there are people who are psychopaths, and they will go after them, and they want to feel themselves special. It's like the people who, when the players are coming out the tunnel, the fans put their hands out to be, what, like, why? Leave the person alone. Don't give you your negative energy. Just let them get in the field and do their court or whatever. But this is the whole thing. And to balance this out, and this is what I think is worrying. And there's a bit of a background to this as well. Of course, Mason Mount.
Come on, bro. Just a squad shirt for us. Come on, one each, Mason. Come on, bro. Come on, Mason. Come on, Mason. One each. I ain't signed for the last 3 days, so I don't know why you lot keep coming back. Hey, first time video.
Now, the whole thing is they were trying to shame him that, he's bigger than his boots and he won't sign jerseys and so on. These are collectors, not fans. So they're getting to sign it and they put it up online and sell it. This is what these people do. I've been through this before. I've been through it with players that I worked with when people were just inundating them with requests. Sign this, sign this, sign this. They get them to sign something and then it's sold. And players now, in America, I know an agent was telling me that one of the biggest issues she has is people come with the baseball player cards. Sign this, please. Why? Because it'll increase his value. But they will have a deal with to sign so many cards from their club, the chewing gum cards, Topps cards, for example, sign so many cards, so they have to sign 20 and then they auction them off and so on, or they sell them, or they put them in a museum, very often, or in storage. But these guys are basically hounding a young man to sign a jersey to make some money. How far do we respect other people's privacy? We spoke last week about the Just Stop Oil and the situation there, but how far do we go to protect people's privacy, Andrew?
We should go more. We should go further. I mean, autographs are what a lot of people love. I used to really, really enjoy going to cricket in England in the 90s, and in the breaks in play, you were allowed to go onto the outfield, and you had the little miniature bats, and you play a little game there. And when there was a fielder fielding on the boundary, and it was a changing over or whatever, you could get your bat signed. I remember once I saw a Manchester United footballer in a supermarket in our local town, and I've never been more nervous in my life, because I genuinely, just like most normal, sane human beings would, thought, well, I'm kind of imposing on him. And as soon as one person says, well, can I have an autograph? However polite you may be, that is going to draw attention. And then within seconds, that player might have literally seconds to get out before he's flooded with loads of people crowding around him. And it's the last thing they might want. American sports culture is very different. I'm fully aware of that. I'm not experienced it deeply, but I know enough about, from my contacts who work and live out there, that there is almost an expectation, a demand that we as fans, and we're saying we're fans, own part of you. You owe everything to us. The access to sports stars is very different. I mean, the thing I've never quite understood is how American journalists, you certainly used to, I don't know if it still is the case, probably not anymore, but would go into locker rooms after games.
Still the case.
And that's, well, you see, that too, I would argue most sporting cultures around the world, absolutely, utterly bizarre. If there is one private inner sanctum where a sports player, you've no idea what psychological things they're going through, what mood they're in. They could be fuming. They might need to debrief it. They've got journalists in their face with TV cameras and God knows what. I find that insane, personally. But I have to accept it is a different sporting culture. Lionel Messi is not your average sports star. He has been brought over for a very specific purpose because of who he is. They're even building 2 new, well, I believe they're temporary for now, but stands just to boost the attendance. They're selling tickets for $200, the cheapest tickets for Inter Miami's game. I believe it's on Friday when he will make his debut. I mean, it's a marketing exercise. Everybody knows that, and that's fine. I'm perfectly happy with that. But I mean, is part of his contract you are owned by the people of Miami? I mean, how far do we go? There's zero respect, in my view, here. It's not even about whether you're a big sports star or not. If you're another human being and you're going to the supermarket, you don't go there to make yourself available to anybody for any purpose. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so I was going to say, look, key message and say, look, there's a time and place for such things, and that is true. Like, you know, also, if he had someone to go to the supermarket for him, he's up his own backside. He doesn't care with the fans. He's not a real. He lives in a little bubble and so on. That's what would be said.
Exactly.
So what, like, and I had it with a tennis player one time who was quite well known, Russian tennis player, and when she went out, she was quite recognizable. When she went out, the only place she could out, for example, in London, people recognized her, but they just said, oh, they left her on her own. They didn't come up. Some people would say, could we get a selfie or autograph? But it was usually quite fine. But she said when she went to America and to Canada, it was absolutely awful. She said the pressure that came on. And I remember my colleague who represented us in America took her to the US Open, and they went out. They simply went out for like snacks. There was I think it could have been even rain actually. So it was probably a warm up tournament before the US Open. So there was rain, and it could have been in Toronto, and it was rain. So they said, okay, we'll do it for a walk, and so her match is put back until the last of the day and so on. So she said, okay, I've got like 4 or 5 hours. I can go back and sleep, but no, I just go out for a walk. She went there for a walk. Went to an ice cream parlor and was just, surrounded by people. And she said it felt frightening at one moment where the security guard had to come in and say, okay, we'll take you at the rear entrance because it was so dangerous. Okay, so moving on slightly from that, one of the things that somebody messaged in, and I'll just read this through. Okay, so the simple question is that at what point does it become dangerous? At what point does it become dangerous?
It is impossible to judge which is the dangerous thing. I mean, Messi could be at the supermarket and people generally just want to take a picture. but there is no safety net. There's no filter to know exactly what somebody else might. Somebody else might be opportunistic, be slightly obsessive or worse, and think, right, this is an opportunity. There's no security guards around. I'll go and run up and jump and give him a hug and make it a bit of content. I mean, then you could get somebody who actually specifically stakes out his house and works out which supermarket he goes to and is there waiting and sort of gets more aggressive. And in his face, it could be somebody who has a loyalty to a rival sports star. Who knows? When does it become too far? When it's already too late, because we can never guarantee. This is the problem. Messi can walk out of his door and it genuinely could be quite terrifying, because he will never know when he can just walk down the street and everything will be okay. He can't guarantee that. You literally can't, unless you employ 4 or 5 Secret Service bodyguards to follow you every step of the way, which in a sense almost defeats the objects of trying to get out of the house and have 1% of a normal lifestyle. I mean, I won't put it to get too far. The honest answer is we'll never know until it's already too late.
And look, we saw what happened. Whitney Houston, when she was a famous singer, she had Kevin Costner as a bodyguard. It didn't end up well for her. But that's a silly joke. One thing as well, just to mention on that, is that South American players as well are extremely vulnerable to drug gangs and to criminal gangs. We've seen it where people's parents or children or relatives have been kidnapped and held for ransom. So again, this is something that we do need to be aware of it as well, because it is something to do have in the back of your mind as a worry. Very last, we'll go for one quick break, go back, very last little minor segment, because there's something happening in England that is really starting to melt down. We discussed it, of course, on our Telegram channel. We're going to have a very quick chat about it now in just one moment. Now, Chelsea, they, of course, were forced to be sold from their owner, Roman Abramovich. They can't now do anything with the money that was paid for Chelsea, so that's a huge issue. And it does look like the club is in a bit of meltdown, no matter what people are saying that, they've got some good players, not from what they have lost. This is the situation right now at Chelsea. I'll scroll down. So the players who have come in, Jackson and Kunku and Moreira. Now, Moreira, of course, people know he's a decent player. He's in. He's going to be a useful addition to the side. They splashed out a lot of cash, 80-odd million for 2 players. But when you look at the players that they have let go, okay, that have been sold, you've got, of course, Kovacic gone to Man City. Great, I think it's a great buy for Man City. Koulibaly has gone to Saudi. Mendy has gone to Saudi. N'Golo Kante, another great player, gone to Saudi on a free. Azpilicueta has gone to, a big fan of his, gone to Atletico Madrid. Rahman, okay, never really, kind of up and down player. He's gone to PAOK. Christian Pulisic, very, very big loss, gone to Milan. Ruben Loftus-Cheek, of course, we mentioned before, he is gone to Milan as well. 15 million. Kai Havertz, huge buy, I think, for Arsenal. I think that this is he and Rice together will be very, very useful when the time comes. But they have lost so many players. They've gotten a lot of money in, spent quite a bit of money on very few. This isn't trimming aside, Andrew. This more looks like a kind of a mini fire sale, unless I'm very, very mistaken.
Well, a fire sale it is, and a very, very necessary one. We've seen the new rules that UEFA have brought in very sensibly about the length of a player's contract that a transfer fee can be spread out over. Chelsea signed a lot of players when Todd Bowley completed his takeover on faintly ludicrous transfer fees and contract lengths so they could spread it out. We saw Mikhailo Mudryk, who has just not proven himself, and so far he's had a very, very shaky start to his career in England. Admittedly, you've got to give players time, I accept that. But signing a player very unproven for, £80 million with an 8-year contract is now not possible. You can only spread it out over 5 years. And I think Chelsea realised very quickly, we've got to get rid quickly, because there's no way we're going to be able to keep the squad that we have. we saw stories of the first team squad spilling out from their own training round changing room. They just simply don't have the space for the players they themselves own, and famously they have a lot of players on loan who've got to come back. So I actually think I would argue this is almost a positive for Chelsea in the simple sense that it had to be done, but they haven't wasted time doing it. It's not healthy in the long run, but the situation they got themselves into, you can't go back in time and say, okay, we're now not going to splash all that money crazily in a scattergun approach as we did last summer. But the fact is we did. The only thing we can do now is offload as much as we possibly can. So will it be enough? Who knows? But there is at least an effort this time round, it seems, to go for marketable, slightly younger players who, even if they do have to sell them on, they will be able to sell on for much bigger fees, which is what they're going to need to do. They've got so many youngsters that this is the downside of it. The volume of their transfers means some very promising youngsters are just never going to get a look at. The likes of Levi Colwill is an interesting one. He's not really played a great deal at the top level other than at Brighton on loan the last season, but he's hugely promising, but he's never going to get a chance to prove himself because of the players they brought in. They go and spend, I don't know how much it was on Malo Gusto, the young French fullback. Really, really promising. But it's like, well, what's the point in having your own promising youth players? It's a decent academy at Chelsea. They have produced a lot of players who've gone on to have very good professional careers. But I don't know. It's a bit of a mess, but this is slightly more sensible than last summer, which is about as big a compliment as I can pay them. It had to happen. My word, Chelsea should be grateful for Saudi right now, because without Saudi, they really would be in trouble.
Yeah, it is the case. I think whatever people are saying, a lot of money is coming into English football from Saudi Arabia. I think that they should be very grateful. Again, Chelsea do have some very good players still on the books. I mean, they've of course got Messi Fofana, who's still there, of course, centre back. I think he's terrific. I really like him.
Yeah,
they've got very, very good players who are there, like Thiago Silva and so on, who are mainstays of the team. I just worry that there's going to be such, imbalance in the side that it's going to hurt them. And I do think, as you said, they're not going to give these young players a chance. Like, who's going to play? Raheem Sterling, no matter what, he will get back in form. Who's going to play ahead of him in England International? Aubameyang, he came in cheap. He's still there. He's, fair age. He's early 30s or maybe mid 30s, but at the same time, he's a decent player. He can do a job for him. We'll see what's going to happen. Andrew, just before we go away, and of course, this is the final week of the Tour de France. Wimbledon is over. But I just want to ask you about Wimbledon. You've watched for a bit of it. Did it match up to your expectations as a tournament?
I have to say, I think it exceeded my expectations. There was enough interest, I think, from a purely personal point of view. In fact, not even a personal point of view. Any event, major event, I think the host or host country's representatives, it always makes a better tournament if at least some of the home representatives do well. If a World Cup's hosted by a country, that country going a little bit further than expected is always makes for a spectacle. And his name has slipped my mind briefly, but the British boy won the boys singles title, the first British boys champion in 60 years. That's a major, major plus. We saw some British doubles, the British girls doubles, who were unseeded. They got to, I think, fourth round. Was it the quarterfinal even? They went much further than they were expected.
Yeah.
But also at the other end of the scale, you want to see the big hitters at the end. Seeing the first and second seeds in the final of the men's singles was brilliant. And one other thing I would like to say that is, for me, which made the tournament exceed expectations. We were all going to be interested to see how there's no point trying to pretend otherwise, how the Russian and Belarusian players would be accepted, as in by the crowd, by the mood, after Wimbledon were well, let's be honest, effectively forced to accept them after not allowing them last year. And one thing that pleasantly surprised me was, I would argue, with the exception of when Victoria Azarenka walked off the pitch, off the court, acknowledged Svitolina, who had played brilliantly to beat her, but most of the world knew what Svitolina's stance was and respected it. Azarenka did. The crowd weren't aware of this and booed Azarenka for not shaking a hand at the net. But other than that, I would say the backing of all players was as fair and even as you could hope for it to be. Now, the Wimbledon crowd is not, shall we say, there are different elements to it. There are some who generally love tennis. There are some who have enough money to be able to go to centre court, who perhaps are not quite as invested in the sport itself and are swept along with outside factors. But Russian players were supported and applauded and backed. And that, I think, is a very promising sign of what sport can do. I'm not saying everything was perfect, but it showed that in the right way, in the sensible atmosphere, there is a way, and I'm not saying it's true for all sports, but for all athletes to compete if it is managed sensibly. We did see journalists try and push some of the players in the post-match press conferences, which of course is their job because they want headlines, trying to focus on outside factors. But there wasn't an explosion. There wasn't a furious anger. There was a support of sporting integrity, and that gave me a little bit of faith. So for that reason, I thoroughly enjoyed the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was good overall. Of course, Britain, we know, a friend of Arthur's, a young lad. He worked before Neil Skupski won the doubles with his Dutch partner as well. So that was good for them. Of course, the English boy, he beat a Russian in the final, Siomin, but he what's his name? Henry Searle, young boy that won the boys. Yes, Searle, Henry Searle. So it's very, very good to see that. So yeah, again, I concur with you. I think it was good. I think people had to understand that Svitolina could not shake hands. She could not acknowledge. She could not even to stand at the net for. I don't think they did the pre-match photographs even, because they understand what that would mean to her and her family and her future, in her safety. Just her safety. People have to understand that. I know many of these players behind the scenes will get on. There are exceptions like Kostyuk, who played quite well in this Wimbledon, but like Ludmila Kichenuk, who won the mixed doubles. Was it, she won mixed doubles? I think it was mixed doubles with Mate Pavic from Croatia. She's a twin sister who also plays. Well, and always her doubles partner, of course, but she is very, very good friends. I've looked after her. She slept on my apartment floor in Moscow, so I know who she is and what she is. And she's been quiet, respectable, and understanding with Russians as well, and keeping distance. And people understand that. And they don't sort of go hard on. They don't sort of complain about it. They don't. There's no abuse. There's no hassle. And people just get on with their lives. And I think it was a nice thing to see happen as well. It was very unusual that we didn't have far worse, but that was good. Of course, in the Tour de France, it's a rest day tomorrow. That is Monday, and then the big time trial on Tuesday, and that will sort out the general classification. Andrew, thank you very much. Until next week. So I know we'll have the Women's World Cup on starting on Thursday, so we'll be watching that as well. So until next week, thank you very much, and have a terrific week, Andrew.
Absolute pleasure, boss. Can't wait till next week already.
Thank you. Okay, and so I'll say good night for now and goodbye to you all. And just so you know that we will be back next Sunday. I'll be in another location, not in Ireland, in Northern Ireland. So not extremely happy about that, but that's the way it is. And that's what's going to happen. So until next week, take care of yourselves and each other.